Hello, welcome to In the Court of the Wenton Knave. Today we're reviewing Drowning Witch, or Ship Arriving Late to Save a Drowning Witch. The cover is from a book called Droodles, I think, which were very simple paintings done with just a couple of lines. So you can actually see there, that's actually a ship arriving late to save a drowning witch. And obviously, Frank liked it, partially because obviously it looks a bit like a Z and an A, so it kind of says Zappa. That's pretty cool. What is absolutely fascinating about this one is it has a hit single. There is a hit single on this album, which I'll talk about in a bit. One thing that has to be said about this is the next release recorded in the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen, which was Frank's own studio, and it has to be said it has fantastic sound, and also there's a lot of edits in various bits of it as well, the live stuff, which could have only been done with a lot of studio time. Something I mentioned when doing You Are What You Is was that Frank in the 80s kind of separated out his different interests, and you know, there was the orchestral stuff and the electronic stuff, and then there was the archival stuff, and there was the sort of vocal rock albums as well. And there is a suggestion that the vocal rock albums suffered as a result of him doing so much. I mean, at the time he was involved with a tribute to Verez concert. He was involved with that, and he met Nicholas Slonimsky, who was a very important classical composer who was involved with the original performances of Ionization by Verez, and also Bartók's first piano concerto or something like that. So important guy. He was in his 80s by this point, but that's when Frank met him. And actually during one of the concerts from this particular tour, he was joined on stage. He actually got him to come up on stage during Pound for the Brown. He actually got him to come on stage and play one of his own pieces on the piano, and apparently the audience went nuts and everything. It was a very strange experience for this classical guy who's used to very serious audiences who sit seriously and listen carefully and then applaud. So that's a great bit of breaking down the barriers. And yeah, I think he wrote a book which was published when Frank was a kid, and it's sort of one of the definitive music theory books you can get, apparently. I mean, around the same time he was involved with an orchestra in Amsterdam, and there was some funding going on. The record company, I think Columbia, were going to fund this orchestral work, and he got them to go on tour so they could fund it, etc, etc. But there was some problem with orchestra members trying to negotiate more money, so Frank pulled the plug on that. I think he lost 250 grand allegedly because he just wasn't prepared to go through all of that. So he was doing that. You know, it was around the same time he was involved with the performance of Sinister Footwear, which never got recorded in its complete state, I don't think. And of course The Perfect Stranger as well. More on that later. It's possible he was thinking about that stuff more than thinking about the rock album. For that reason, this is 6 tracks. 2 of them are good, you could argue. I mean, from my perspective, because I'm such a big fan, it's all good. It's all good Zappa stuff, but 2 of them are excellent. But that's okay, you know. You've basically got half an album of studio stuff, half an album of live stuff, which is good because this is the 82 band, which is generally considered one of his very best bands. I miss the horns. There's no horns in the 82 band, other than the occasional bit of saxophone, I think, which is kind of why I prefer the 88 band. But still, there's a lot of stuff released by that band on the You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore series, particularly Volume 5, which has a whole disc dedicated to it, and that is definitely worth listening to. But yeah, on this album, track 1, No Not Now. This is the return of the cartoon vocals again, so you've got some very high vocals, which is quite entertaining. You really notice the production is excellent on this album. Everything's nice and crisp and clear. You've got really nice bass line, and it's okay. Then track 2, which I haven't mentioned yet, is Valley Girl, which was the hit single, featuring Moon on vocals. She's got a writing credit on there as well, because it's Moon's impression of a valley girl. Those that don't know what that is, that became known as the thing that was in the film Clueless, I think, that ridiculous sort of dumb young voice, a teenagery voice. And she does lots of impressions of that kind of voice. Apparently she'd gone to these clubs and picked it up, and they thought it was very funny, and then it was picked up by radio stations as something entertaining and ended up being a hit. Frank was very honest about this when he says, you know, it wasn't a hit because they liked the music, it was a hit because they liked the sound of Moon's voice. But it means it's one of his most famous things. I mean, in a sense, the average person will see Frank as a sort of demented comedian, because, you know, they'll think, well, yeah, he did Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and he did Valley Girl, novelty songs. So they probably think he makes novelty songs. Very strange. It does mean that this charted very well. It sold quite well because of the hit single. So it's a real shame, in a way, Valley Girl wasn't on You Are What You Is, which is a much stronger album. Such is life. Track 3, I Come From Nowhere. And lots of bits and pieces, lots of cool fast runs and things like that, very Roxy band. But the actual essence of the song, you've got some very predictable chords, kind of Iron Maiden-y chords, and some really funny singing, which I think is Roy Estrada. I've just tried to do an impression of it, but I've cut it out. I can't do it. But I think maybe this is a parody of kind of Duran Duran type music, I think. Some of it isn't, because some of it's sort of the fast runs and stuff. But maybe the main song is a bit long. Solo is quite interesting, lots of sustain on the solo, so it wasn't like he was doing loads of notes, so that's fairly interesting. So then we turn the record over to the live side, where we get to track 4, which is a big favourite of mine, Drowning Witch. Highlight of the album. It's a 12-minute piece. Remember, this is live. Apparently there are 15 edits on this song to get a good version down, because it's some of his most difficult stuff. Very, very little intricate bits, syncopated stuff that is like the Roxy stuff, but a whole generational leap forward from that. It is a fantastic, it's worth it, because those 15 edits are worth it to hear such a good performance of this incredible piece of music. It's fantastic, and it's funny as well. As well as having, there's references to Rite of Spring in there. Supposedly the Dragnet theme is in there, although I haven't quite spotted that. Maybe it's really obvious and I've missed it because I know it so well, I don't know. The solo on there is great. I think he's using the bass pickup on his guitar to give it a sort of muffledy blah 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 sound, which adds a different edge to his usual solos. The swirling ending is great. When you think it's finishing, and it just sort of speeds up, but it's played so precisely. It's just fantastic, just fantastic. And it segues straight into the next track, which is the other highlight of the album, which is Envelopes. A real classic Zappa awkward melody where it goes dee doo dee 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 stuff. On first listening, or from someone ignorant of that style, it would sound just like random notes, but it's just fantastic, and it's a great example of the real meeting of his orchestral stuff and his rock stuff. And this track was played by a couple of different orchestras. There's a couple of different releases of this by orchestras as well. This is the rock band version. You know, it's similar in kind of stylistically similar to things like, you know, the naval aviation in art thing of the 2-minute piece. Great, really great. And more on that later. We'll get more of that. But yeah, the album ends on Teenage Prostitute, kind of a big bombastic Queen type thing. So kind of a good ending. It's okay. Vocals by someone called Lisa Papale, who kind of got like an operatic voice, which I think adds something to the music, I quite like. But apparently she just didn't have the right skills to be a Zappa band member in other ways. She was great at sight reading, apparently did things like The Dangerous Kitchen, and I imagine at some point would have ended up doing Uncle Meat as well, which originally obviously had similar kind of vocals on it, but it wasn't to be. And it ends the album, a kind of a Met album, but there's bits of it I really like. See you next time.